What was your question, Achila?
So I've never seen that before.
Yeah, so custom does play. Right.
This is how it's like, okay, we're done with the field. This is how we're presenting it.
Right. Then it's different, yes.
No, but
Then it makes a difference. Okay.
Right, so she's, yeah, like that's what she's saying, like Persians have this.
Yeah, but if majority of the places around sell it without that, so then you are.
No, the whole idea is to eat it fresh, and this is ta'anuk.
I understand.
It's
I
It's
understand.
actually a luxury you have for Shabbat Kodesh.
I get it. I get it. But the point is that if you're buying it in a way that you still have to process it in a way that it would normally need to be processed through this in order to be sold at a store, generally speaking.
Right.
So then you are, you're basically doing that processing on Shabbat, which you can't do.
Right.
In other words, my point is, if in general, the way that it's done is that's removed, so then you should not be the one to remove it on Shabbat. Okay, that's called dash, Melacha Dosh. That's how you thresh the pistachios. That's what they do. If you would ask them in the field, what do you do to get the pistachios out of here? Oh, we have to walk on them. We have to step on them. We have to push with our weight on them. We have a machine that puts them through whatever in order to undo that hard outer shell, and then we sell it as a finished product, pistachios. See what I'm saying? That's the idea. Yeah. Okay, let's go. Now.
So are you allowed to mash avocado?
It's a different question. That's a different question. We'll have to get to that, B'ezras Hashem. Okay, that's going to be a tochen question. Okay, let's continue. So part of Melacha Dosh is the idea, which is what we call mefarek. Mefarek means, which is the Gemara talks about this idea. Mefarek means where you unload. You unload something from its source, and the idea of mefarek really applies mostly to what we call schita. Schita is the act of squeezing a juice or a liquid out of something. There are a lot of different facets to this discussion, but let's start it off in the very basic terminology, the basic categories. When it comes to midoraita, the Torah level of the law, when we talk about schita, if you squeeze two different types of foods, one is grapes, the other is olives. If you squeeze a grape or an olive to get the juice out of the grape or the oil out of the olive on Shabbat, that is called schita midoraita. That is the biblical prohibition of squeezing in order to get liquid out of a fruit on Shabbat by the Torah. Grapes and olives are midoraita. Again, we're talking here about extracting the juice from a fruit. So grapes are midoraita, olives are midoraita. Now, the next category is what the Chazal called tutim verimonim. Tutim verimonim means berries or pomegranates. Now, these are examples. Berries and pomegranates are examples of fruits whose juices are used commonly in the world. So it doesn't really mean only berries and pomegranates. It could be pineapples, it could be apples, it could be oranges, it could be pears, mangoes, tangerines. This category includes anything that is juiced normally, okay? That's category number 2. Those things are prohibited to be juiced on Shabbat, but they're only prohibited midirabanan rabbinically. Now soon we'll see why it makes a difference, whether it's prohibited midoraita or it's prohibited midirabanan. But the point is that if you decide you want to have pineapple juice, so since out there in the world they make pineapple juice, so we are prohibited rabbinically to make pineapple juice. Same thing for apple juice, etc. Yeah.
So if you're opening up a pomegranate on Shabbat and you're actually taking out the seed, it's inevitable that your finger's going to take a little bit of that.
Perfect. Great question. We're gonna get there in a second. Beautiful. Okay. Now, Group number 3 is fruits that they don't make juice out of it. That in general in the world, they do not make juice from these types of fruits. For example, quinces. Have you ever seen a quince?
Yes.
Right. Usually you don't find quince juice on the market. I don't really know I've ever
syrup.
seen what?
They have quince syrup.
Is it like quince juice? Or is it a syrup with quince flavor?
It's
I don't
syrup.
know.
It has, they
Okay.
take the quinces and they.
Do people drink quince juice generally? Not really.
Not a
What?
lot of-
There's not a lot of juice. There you go. Etrog juice. Very, very weak, right? Right? Okay. What else? What do you think about watermelon juice? Do they make watermelon juice? Yeah. Yeah. Now they make watermelon juice. Okay. They make coconut juice also, right? That tastes horrible.
Would jam be like?
What? Yeah.
Would jam
okay.
be like under this category?
No, we're talking now about squeezing out a fruit, making juice. So anything that usually is squeezed is in category number 2. Anything that is not usually squeezed, that's category number 3. And those can be squeezed on Shabbat. Chazal never made a decree. Can. Group 3, not group 2. So let's say oranges you cannot squeeze to make orange juice. Pineapples you cannot squeeze to make pineapple juice because these are generally out there in the world.
Lemon juice you take.
Wait a second, we'll get to lemons in a second. Okay, yes.
Let's say you're squeezing, not saying that I do this, but let's say you're squeezing an orange to make a salad dressing.
Okay, great question. We're gonna get there. Right now, we're just talking about making pure juice. So if you're making juice of something that is normally out there in the world sold as a juice, the rabbis made a prohibition against doing that on Shabbat. So you cannot make orange juice, you cannot make apple juice, you cannot make any type of juice that normally is out there. Okay, fine. Now, if it's not normally made into a juice, for example, like we said, quinces, so you could make quince juice on Shabbat if you want, because people, it's not something that people normally make. Therefore, this doesn't apply. Okay, clear? So far, so good? Okay, let's move. Now,
I just want to I have a question. Are you allowed to put fruits in water
yes,
and the juice comes?
the flavor will come out
Yeah,
from it.
yeah, like
Sure, yes,
infused
that's okay. That's okay. Now, why is this so important? So there's a halakha where the rabbis stepped in to another area of juice that may come out of a fruit. And this is called mashkim shezavu, which means liquids that flowed out of a fruit. And over here, depending on whether or not the prohibition is midoraita or derabanan, that will determine whether we can use it or not. So let's say, for example, somebody had a bag of grapes. He sent the kid to school, I don't know, with a bag of grapes, and his books came and crushed everything. And now you've got this beautiful liquid inside of the plastic bag, and you want to know, can you drink it? Now, the example that I gave, the answer is definitely yes, because it happened on Friday or whatever. But let's say that you have some situation, a kid stepped on the bag of grapes on Shabbat, squeezed everything out, right? So over here, Chazal stepped in and said, you cannot use that juice on Shabbat. The reason being, because it's forbidden midoraita to squeeze grapes and to have the juice of the grapes. And since it's forbidden midoraita, we're afraid that if you drink that juice, you may come to squeeze more, and that's a big problem. Okay? And even if you didn't have in mind to make juice, you just had in mind to eat the grapes, doesn't matter. The point is that there's juice of grapes that's either seeped out of the grapes on Shabbat, or maybe they got a little bit crushed on Shabbat. Point is, you cannot have them. Doesn't make a difference what you intended to do with them, whether you wanted to juice them or eat them, doesn't matter.
But it's
all
not like the
forbidden.
shinoi.
Doesn't
It's
matter.
done in a
The
weird
point is,
way.
Chazal made an isur against having that juice. Okay, the same holds true for olives, because olives are prohibited midoraita. Okay, very important. Now, same exact story. However, instead of grapes, let's talk about an orange that was squished, right? by mistake on Shabbat? Or let's say an orange hat, or exactly your question, right? You're slicing a pomegranate and juice comes out. You're slicing a watermelon and juice comes out of the watermelon, right? So remember, to begin with, the watermelon is asur only midirabanan. It's only rabbinically prohibited. The only thing that's from the Torah prohibited is grapes, are grapes and olives, right? So when you slice the pomegranate, you slice the watermelon, and the juice is coming out all over the place, and you want to take that juice, pour it into a cup, and drink it, enjoy, no problem. Why? Because you intended. Here's the key: you intended to eat this watermelon. Your intention was not to juice the watermelon. Now, if your intention was to juice the watermelon, then whatever liquids came out are prohibited to you. Okay, so I hope that's clear. If your intention, let's say it again, if your intention was, again, we're category 2, things that are not biblically prohibited, things that are only rabbinically prohibited. If your intention was to eat those foods, and then as you're cutting them up, or as whatever happened, some juice came out, you want to drink it in a cup, enjoy. Why? Because your intention was to eat. Your intention was not to juice. But if your intention was to juice, then you cannot have it, even though it's only from category number 2. Is it clear? Okay, excellent. No, not clear?
I'm just thinking.
Just thinking. Okay.
What was the term you said?
Mashkim shezavu, which means liquids that float out.
So the category 2, if you unintentionally get juice from it, you're allowed to drink it?
Yes.
Yes.
Either of us.
Yes, exactly.
And category 1, absolutely not.
Right. And category 2 is only on condition that your intention was to eat it. And while you were eating it, or while you were cutting it, or while something happened, then some juice came out. Classic example: tomato, cucumber salad, and the bottom of the salad. I don't know if you guys are into this. Some people like to take the juice at the bottom of the salad, put it into a cup and drink. I don't know if you guys know. Okay.
Water.
What?
lemon into the salad.
Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there in a second. Okay. Clear so far, so good?
But you could for sure cut olives and grapes and eat it.
You can cut olives, you can cut grapes, right? But if there's a liquid that puddles up on the bottom, then you cannot. Okay? Yes.
Sometimes I make fruit salad and grape is part of it, and at the bottom it's juice. It's a mix,
Yeah, it's okay.
and then put it in a cup. Fruits, plus the juice, they eat.
It's like a fruit salad.
Yes.
It's okay. That's okay. Because it's a mixture. It's not just the grape. Yeah. Okay. Good. So that's important. That's why it makes a big difference whether we're talking about something that is prohibited midoraita or midirabanan. Now, the question that was asked before is about, what about, can you suck the juice out of grapes? And the answer is, if you're eating it, if it's in your mouth, then it's no problem. Like you take the grape, and while you're eating it, you, I don't know, suck out the grape, there's the inside of it, no problem. However, if you want to like leave it outside of your mouth and suck on it like from the outside in, so that already you should not do on Shabbat. There's a machloket about that, and it's better to avoid the machloket. So, if you want to suck out the juice, eat it, and then, or put it in your mouth and then kind of pull it out like that. Okay, but if you want to leave it outside, that's a problem. Lechatchila, you shouldn't do it. Okay, clear?
Some people freeze grapes.
People freeze the grapes and they suck it out like that. Okay, so try to avoid that on Shabbat. Okay, now, what about lemons? And what about the other questions? We'll get there. Lemons are a very interesting issue in halacha. If you look in Shulchan Aruch, it says clearly, Maran writes, mutar lischot, and he writes the word almost in English, lemons. He says you could squeeze lemons. Maran in Hebrew writes lemons. Interesting. He says you're allowed to squeeze lemons on Shabbat. Okay. Now the question is why? So what he's telling you is that you could technically squeeze a lemon and make a lemon juice on Shabbat. No problem. mutar lischot lemons, permissible. So there are two explanations as to why. The simple explanation is because they never would drink lemons, meaning lemonade by itself. It's always mixed into something else. It's mixed into water. It's like it's never drunk by itself as a liquid, so therefore it doesn't have the status of a liquid on its own, because it always gets mixed into something else. So according to that, usually we don't drink lemons just by itself. We always mix it into some other, add some water to it, etc. So therefore it would be okay to do that. The other explanation is that no. I'll read you the explanation inside. אין איסור סחיטה כשסוחטים את מימיו בפני עצמן ואחר כך מערבים אותם, אבל אם המנהג לסחוט מימיו לתוך משקה אחר, מותר. So according to this, the custom back then was to not make a drink out of it. Well, nowadays we do make a drink out of it, right? So if that's the case, it's a problem for us to make lemonade on Shabbat. So to make a long story short, the idea is like this. We don't make lemonade on Shabbat just like that, meaning to just squeeze lemons into an empty vessel, we say better not to do that. What we do is going to be explained based on the following halakha. There's a very important rule you guys have to know, very, very important in the laws of Schita and Shabbat, and that's called mashke haba letoch ochel ke'ochel dami, which means whenever you squeeze any kind of fruit onto a food and you're squeezing the juice onto a solid food, the halacha is very clear. It doesn't make a difference what it is that you're squeezing. You are 100% allowed to squeeze it onto the solid. That could even mean grapes, which are forbidden midoraita to squeeze. But if you squeeze it onto a salad, for example, if you decide that you want your salad to have the flavor of grapes, go ahead, squeeze it onto your salad, no problem. Why? Because it's going onto a salad. And the simple explanation of this is that since it is not being isolated in a cup or in a bowl, but rather it's mixing, it's falling right onto a salad, it's not a drinkable drink now. It's not something that you can take and go like that, because it's mixed into a big food now. You didn't create a liquid, you added more to your salad food. Yes.
Are you allowed to, let's say you want to put more lemon juice in a stew, can you put lemon juice in a stew and then heat it up?
So, well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on into that question. The thing is like this. First of all, the discussion that we're having now is about squeezing onto a solid. Now the question is, do we have the leniency to, when it comes to lemons, to even squeeze into an empty vessel or not? That's the question that we're dealing with. By lemons, specifically by lemons.
But I thought you said you can because it doesn't hold the status of juice.
Oh, so very good. So this is the big debate. So let's just take it step by step. Number one, we have to have the first halakha clear. If you're ever squeezing a juice onto a salad, it's no problem. Clear? Okay, that has to be clear. Squeezing a juice onto a salad, for example.
Fish.
Exactly. You want to squeeze it onto a fish, you want to squeeze it onto a salad, you want to, whatever it may be, mutar. That's fine. Okay. Now, that is now going to be applied over here. What many poskim say, Ben Ish Chai, the Mishnah Berurah, what they say over here is that because of the question that we brought up earlier, whether or not the idea that we're allowed to squeeze, what Shulchan Aruch said back in his time, that you're allowed to squeeze lemons into an empty container, that idea, if we hold of that or not, is a question mark. So therefore they say, easy solution. Let's say you want to make lemonade. So how about this? Squeeze the lemons onto some sugar first. Put some sugar inside and squeeze lemons onto that. Why? That way it's going to be a liquid going onto a salad, right? So that way you have plenty of sugar there. You have lemons going onto the sugar, so it gets absorbed in there. Add your water, mix it up, and it's going to be a nice tasting lemonade. So that's step one. That's what the Ben Ish Chai will say. That's what the Mishnah Berurah will tell you, etc. Now, Chacham Ovadia alav shalom held not necessary. Not necessary. He held you're allowed to squeeze the lemons into an open vessel. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this so that you're aware that if you want to be lenient, you have what to be lenient. You have what to rely on, because Chacham Ovadia was lenient. But it said even he and others as well held that if a person is machmir, Chacham Ben Sion writes, if a person is machmir, tavo alav beracha, somebody wants to be strict about it, he deserves to be blessed, or she deserves to be blessed. So again, the strict letter of the law as far as lemons are concerned, you're allowed to squeeze them into an open vessel, open container, like Chacham Ovadia writes. But if you want to be strict on yourself and try and squeeze it onto something like sugar or something like that, and then mix it with the water and make lemonade, that would be a better option, because that would satisfy all opinions.
Or like putting lemon in your tea.
Okay,
Like
now,
squeezing it into tea.
so let's talk more about lemons. First of all, let's take a step back. Any fruit that you decide you want to squeeze onto a salad is fine. But that's when you want to squeeze it onto a salad. But if you want to squeeze it into a liquid, that's not fine. Okay? That's a problem, technically. We're talking about squeezing it onto a salad. It should have the status of a solid food. Okay? Now, lemons, however, you're back to the same question. If you hold, you could squeeze it into an open container, empty container. You could squeeze it into a tea as well, right? There would be no problem. If you're following the heter of Chacham Ovadia, you would have no problem to squeeze lemons into an empty container, into a tea. You're good to go. Others who want to be machmir would squeeze the lemon first onto the sugar in the tea. And if you're Persian and you don't put sugar in the tea, it's a different story. Okay, right? So if you want to put it onto the sugar, so then, okay, if no sugar, fine. You figure it out a different way. You get the lemon juice from that bottle and you put it in there. I don't know. Figure it out. Yeah.
So you can, just like in terms of logistics, can you take like a spoon to help you squeeze whenever you're squeezing lemons? Or is that like tool?
Okay, so that's a great question. We're going to learn very shortly that you're not supposed to use any kind of tool when you're squeezing. Even things that you're allowed to squeeze, you should not use any tools, because that's a problem called uftin dechol, which means weekday activities. So one of those juicers, you should not use a lemon with, even though you could squeeze lemons, don't use the juicer. I have a tool at home that you can put the lemon in one side and squeeze it like that, and it comes out from the other side, which is very good.
So you can't use a spoon?
Well,
I wouldn't do this, but you can't use a spoon to get lemon out?
so a spoon to get the lemon out, meaning you want to crush the lemon like that? Fork.
You have to like loosen.
I think it could be that a fork is, I haven't seen it discussed. It could be it's okay, because I'm talking about like squeezing tools. A fork is not a squeezing tool. It's just you happen to be using it for squeezing, but it's not meant for that. I think it would probably be okay. What?
Same with the spoon.
Same with a spoon. It's not a squeezing tool. Okay, so very important to know about all these things. Okay, now, so are we clear on lemons? No? Yeah.
Can you just repeat what the rule is on squeezing lemon into liquid?
So again, it depends on if you are following the more strict opinion, you can't do it, because you can only do it onto a salad. If you're following Chacham Ovadia's opinion, no problem. Lemons you could squeeze anywhere, right?
In
Ashkenazim should squeeze onto a salad, like the Mishnah Berurah. Exactly, correct. Okay, fine, very good. Let's continue. There's a lot more to speak about. Now, what about squeezing? Let's say you have a pickle, and the pickle has a little bit too much juice inside. We want to squeeze it out. Sometimes when you take a bite of the pickle, the juice just spritzes out everywhere. So you want to avoid that. So you want to squeeze it ahead of time. So the halakha says,
Juice pickles.
No. So usually speaking, what you're doing is you're trying to get rid of the juice so that it's not so, doesn't spritz out everywhere. So the halacha is, in that case, it's fine. when you're just trying to make the pickle better, or it tastes better, or be less juicy, or whatever, just trying to get rid of the juice, that's not a problem. The halacha says that's perfectly okay, because you're not trying to get the liquid. Squeezing involves getting a liquid. You're trying to get a liquid. Here, I'm not trying to get a liquid. I'm trying to get rid of a liquid, right? So therefore, it wouldn't be considered a problem. And the same thing would apply for a cooked vegetable, something that's already absorbed a lot of liquid, and you want to get rid of the liquid in order to eat it and have an easier time eating it. That would not be a problem at all. Okay. Okay, so far so good. Are we clear on everything? Excellent. Okay, let's continue. There's a very interesting decree that the rabbis made, which again is not midoraita, it's rabbinic, and this is called risuk sheleg. Risuk sheleg means crushing snow. Now over here, crushing snow means something more like an ice cube. Let's say you want water, right? And you don't have any cold water around, but you've got some ice cubes in the freezer. You say, you know what, let me crush them. And that way I'll have like a liquid, basically, cold water, right? So the halacha says you cannot do that on Shabbat. That is a decree that the rabbis made because it looks kind of like squeezing fruit, squeezing grapes. Just like you squeeze the grape, you get the juice out of it. So you cannot crush the ice to get the liquid out of it as well. So that's called risuk sheleg. Now, you might say, well, in that case, can I walk on snow on Shabbat? The answer is yes, because again, you're not trying to get liquid out. Can I shovel snow on Shabbat? Yes, you can shovel snow. You're not trying to get, again, where you have an eruv and you're allowed to carry. You're not trying to get the liquid out, especially if it's dangerous. You're allowed to do it. You're allowed to put an ice cube into water, even though the ice is going to melt. That is something which is okay. It's going to happen by itself. However, you cannot take, let's say, one of those cans of frozen concentrated orange juice or apple juice, put it into the big pitcher, and then start to, mess around with it and pour water onto it to make a big pitcher of frozen concentrated orange juice, apple juice, because that would be crushing the concentrate to get out the liquid from it. That's a problem. You can't do that. Yeah.
Let's say you have
That's-
a frozen water bottle that people do up in the summertime, and like you start to like squeeze
Squeeze it and crush
bottle
it?
to, like,
Good
loosen
question,
it.
right? So you have a
It melts
frozen, like a
faster.
nice ice water bottle, and you're going like this to get loose. So are you trying to get liquid, or are you just trying? It could be you're trying to get liquid, so it's a problem. If you're actually intending to crush it, yeah, that's a problem. Okay, very good. Yes.
So sometimes I'll take frozen milk and I'll defrost it in the sink,
Mhm.
and then I'll turn on cold water. I still won't turn on hot water, but in the summer, the cold water is still warmer than the frozen milk, and it'll like melt it quickly.
Okay, so okay, very good.
Can I do that?
So I want to address that. Very, very important. The frozen concentrated orange juice and apple juice is okay if you just put it into the water and let it melt.
Right.
Understand? As long as you're not crushing it. That's the
Okay.
point. Same thing over here. You put this bottle of frozen milk into whatever, cold water, hot water, right? And it's just melting. The point is you're not crushing it. You understand? That's the key. But by the guy who wants to make the pitcher full of the can of orange juice, that guy is mixing it up. He's trying to crush it, right? That's a problem. Understand the difference? Okay, so that's very important. That's called risuk sheleg. Okay, very important to be aware of. Now, part of the isur of mefarek is also related to nursing and also milking of cows and stuff like that. Because what Chazal explained is that mefarek has to do with the extracting of the juice from wherever it is. So for a mom to nurse on Shabbat, of course, is no problem. That's not an issue. But what happens if, let's say, the mom is away from the baby and the mom wants to, what's the word? Pump, or there's a word, I'm forgetting the word, release, express, yeah, she wants to express the milk, right? So can she do that or not? So the answer is, it depends on the circumstances. It depends on what's going on. The simple understanding is that for a mom to express milk from her body into a container for the purposes of saving that milk, that is forbidden to do on Shabbat. The simple reason is because, like we said, you're extracting the milk from its source, and you're doing it for the purpose of having it as a liquid, and that's something which is forbidden. Same thing would apply to milking a cow or any other animal. When you want to milk it for the purposes of having that milk, Chazal said that that's considered to be the Melacha of Mefarek, which is part of Melacha Dosh. So therefore, it's a problem. However, the Gemara does talk about a concept called Tsar Ba'alei Chaim, which means that sometimes it could be a cow, it could be a goat, or it could even be a lady that's having a very hard time because she's very full and she wants to get rid of it. And what does she do in that circumstance? It's not easy for her. So in that case, the halacha says that she's allowed to get rid of it. She's allowed to express it, and as long as it goes to waste, as long as it's not being saved, then she is permitted to go ahead and to express it as long as it goes to waste. Now, the question is like this: going to waste could be a little bit of an issue because she's not going to go around. Probably she's not going to go around squirting it, right? She wants to go ahead and do it in a way that's a little bit cleaner. So, what about the following idea? Can she pump into a container and then throw it out? Or do we say, hey, that's not okay because you just made a bunch of liquid? Problem, right? So that is a dispute amongst the poskim. Some want to say, look, she's pumping it. Yes, it's going into a container, but she's getting rid of it. She's about to dispose of it. Others say, yeah, but right now it's a liquid. You just made the liquid. It's a problem, right? It's not like it went into a solid or something. You just made the liquid. So what they say is, first of all, you have a solution by putting something that is like a soap inside of it or something. Like put soap inside, and that way the liquid is useless. When it goes in, you're not making the liquid; it's going straight into the soap. There's nothing you can do with it. So therefore, it's perfectly fine if you do it that way. Others want to be even more lenient and say that it's okay, even not. You put it into the thing and throw it out afterwards. There are those that are lenient in that respect as well. Now, I want to share with you what?
I said it's tempting not to throw it out if you don't want to open it.
Right. So some say that that you can change your mind. It's very hard to get rid of this priceless food for the baby. Yeah.
Can you save it and then give it to the baby in an hour?
And that's the point. You can't because you cannot because you're milking it for the purposes of having a liquid, and you just extracted the liquid on Shabbat.
Now you really are not
I'm sorry.
Let's say you're full at that moment, and then you have to express it, but then let's say you can't hold on to it for another hour or whatever it is. Like it's an issue. Like a baby might want to eat in an hour, and you can't. Have to do it in an hour.
Oh, that's so. What if a baby can't take formula? Right, that's a good question. But I'm saying over here, if you're making a liquid, you're making the liquid. So that's the simple understanding is that you just extracted the liquid on Shabbat. You can't do that, right? You have to give him something else, or have the baby nursed from you. But to actually extract the liquid, you can't do, right? That's the big problem here. So yeah.
So what if you have a vessel and you put like the powdered cereal or something in that vessel?
Oh, good. That's nice. That's nice. That's going into a salad. Very good.
So that would work.
That would not be a problem of schita.
Right, but then.
Correct, because it went into.
You can make baby cereal on Shabbat.
Oh, so that's another good question. Can you? Well, this is an interesting thing. Can,
With two ways.
two shinui. We'll get to that when we learn Melacha Dosh. It depends how, if you make it thick, if you make it thin. Depends. There's a lot of rules about that. But as far as schita is concerned, she's right. If it's going onto a salad, then it's not a problem. It's correct. Very good. Okay, but
Formula in there, like in the formula, then that's a good one.
and it goes on to that.
Yeah, but
Right.
can you use it?
The thing is like this. you have to do it. In other words, if let's say there's a drop of formula and the milk is going to overwhelm it, then it's not called going onto a salad. It has to be like it really went onto a salad. You know what I'm saying? So if you have a significant amount of formula there, then yeah, that would be something to talk about.
So what happens if the baby doesn't take
Oh,
formula?
okay. So now let's talk about this. What happens if you have an issue, which is, there's a lot to talk about. We're not going to get finished tonight, I don't think. What happens if you have an issue, for example, a baby that he can't, you know what? He doesn't take formula and he only eats the mom's milk in a bottle, right? There is such a thing, right? So this is a very interesting thing. So in this case, there's more room to be lenient, okay? Because really, the baby cannot eat anything besides for this milk that's coming out, and the baby could be at danger of not having enough food. What they say is something very interesting. They say in such a case to have someone else express the milk with you, which is going to make it now, instead of a doraita, a derabanan. Because the rule is that shnaim shasa'u pturim. Whenever you have a job that can be done by one person that is done now by two people, so then automatically it is not considered to be doraita, it's considered derabanan. If you don't believe me, I'll read you the halacha inside. Lechatchila, he says, and this is coming from Chacham Ovadia, Tihye isha mesayat ima be'et hachaliva letoch hakli. Ideally, in such a case, you should have a woman that is going to help you to express the milk together with you into the vessel. In such a case, there's no question the rabbis did not make this prohibited, because again, we're talking about a situation where the baby needs this milk. He only can have this milk. He doesn't take formula and he doesn't nurse directly. He nurses from a bottle only. So the baby needs this milk. So in such a case, we can rest assured the rabbis were not strict and they allowed us to do this rabbinic violation, which is what we call shnaim shasa'ua, two people doing this together. It might sound a little bit impractical, but if it's the situation, you have what to rely on.
I don't understand why this would make any difference if it's one person or two people.
The rule is that whenever you have a melacha that could have been done by one person, for example, let's say I have a chair, and it's forbidden for me to walk outside with the chair because there's no eruv. So carrying from inside the house to outside the house is a violation of the Torah. Cannot carry on Shabbat. Okay, no problem. So I carried this outside, I violated the law of Shabbat. Let's say that I take my friend and together we carry this chair. Now, is this a one-person job or a two-person job? A one-person job. You don't need two people for that. But if two people do it, even though it would have been a violation of a Torah rule, but since two people did it together, so now it's lowered to a non-Torah violation. Only the rabbis said that it's prohibited. Yeah, it's called shnaim shasa'u pturim. If both of us carried from inside to outside and it's a one-person job, we're both exempt. We don't have to bring a sin offering in Bet HaMikdash. We're both pturim.
So why? I don't understand why.
So it comes from psukim. It says, the pasuk says, the reason is because the Torah says ba'asota, which means that the fellow did the whole thing. He has to bring a sin offering. He's held responsible when he did the whole thing, meaning he did it, not two people. Torah specifically says he did it. So therefore, the rabbis learned, two people did it, so they're exempt. So therefore, what we say over here is that it would be better for two people to do this instead of just her herself. And that way, everybody would say that she's allowed to put it into the cup or into the pump it, whatever, like that. Okay, so that's important. We have some more time. Are we good to go? We're good to go. Okay, very good. Let's go. There's some more things I'd like to talk about. Let's go. So let's talk about baby wipes. I think we mentioned baby wipes in the past, right? But it's important to talk about baby wipes. And the idea that squeezing out a liquid from a baby wipe is a big problem, right? You cannot do that on Shabbat. If you decide that you want to clean the baby, the act of squeezing the liquid out of the baby wipe is a problem. There's no question that the easiest and most glatt kosher, so to say, way of cleaning the baby's diaper, which I'll be very honest with you, I have never done in my life, ever, but I admit that this is probably the best and most kosher way of doing it, is what they call the spritz. If you spritz the baby with a little bottle, so now the wetness is over there, you don't need any baby wipe or anything like that. So you spritz it, you clean it,
I actually.
right? What?
I do that.
It's great, it's easy, and it's not a big deal.
Like, you put like a little scent in it.
Put
Like
a scent in
herbal
it.
scent, so like when
Right.
you open the diaper, like you don't like pass out.
Right, because sometimes it's a very heavy scent from the, right, I agree with you, yeah, very good. What? You could use a dry paper towel. Yeah, tissue, paper towel, whatever. Point is that you don't have a squeezing concern anymore because you don't, the item that you're using is not wet. The problem that we have with baby wipes is that when you press down, so then the liquid could come out. If you press down hard enough, the liquid comes out. So,
There's also permissible Shabbat wipes in
okay.
the supermarket.
And also not
Beautiful.
all of the wipes, water doesn't come out.
Okay, so what I'm gonna tell you now, is based on what my Rebbe held, Alav Hashem Rebbe Belsky. But you should know it's counterintuitive. It's very counterintuitive. He held that when you have that, the wetter the baby wipe is, the better it is. The wetter it is, the better it is. The reason that that's the case, he felt, was because when you have a very wet baby wipe, so the molecules of water are already on the surface. You don't need to squeeze them from inside. They're already, it's so moist, so wet, that once you touch it, you're already feeling the wetness on you. So therefore, you don't even need to squeeze. So all you would need to do is just kind of gently, wipe down the baby, and that's all you got to do, right? It's very, very wet, very good. Now again, doesn't mean you can go and, press down and squeeze out whatever you want. The point is that because of the fact that it's already very wet, so then you don't need to squeeze out. Now, in the event that you did press a little bit, you didn't have it in mind, and it wasn't needed anyway because of the fact that you had it already on the surface. So therefore, the baby wipes that are very, very, very wet, he held, are very good. Okay, so that's important. I remember I once saw actually a rabbi that I'm sure many of you know and are familiar with, that he gives also a lot of classes around here. We sat next to each other in Shiur by Rabbi Belsky Alav Shalom, and I remember him coming over to the rabbi with a box of baby wipes, and he made the rabbi Alav Shalom feel it and tell him that it's good or not good. And he said, "Yeah, this is wet enough. It's good." I remember that very vividly. I get very wet baby wipes. Yeah.
Costco ones are good.
I know that the Pampers one and the white box are usually very wet. And yeah, usually the Costco ones are pretty good too. If you left a baby wipe out, okay, and it dried, so then already, you shouldn't really use that one because you would have to push on it to get more. Okay, yes.
I have a question. Are we talking about squeezing out of like cloth versus tissue?
You
Like
can't,
cloth versus non-cloth?
usually they're all cloth, these
Or
baby
like-
wipes.
Like paper towel?
You can't squeeze out of the paper towel either. Not supposed to do that. As long as it's absorbed in something, you can't go, shh, you can't squeeze it out.
So I had a specific question because I always need to clean up sticky stuff.
Mhm.
So I asked my Rav, can I wet the paper towel and wipe it? And he said, yes.
Okay, so
I don't
would
know.
be better to wet the table and then take a paper towel and clean.
Or
See what I'm
like the
saying?
floor, like, I don't know, like smush, whatever. like-
Yeah, the key is as long as it's wet enough that you don't have to press out. That's the key.
So there's no.
Sometimes you go to the sink, you make it nice and wet. It's sopping wet, so you just gotta, you don't even have to push. It's already wet.
So by you, there's no distinction between cloth and non-cloth?
What distinction is there supposed to be?
I always thought that that's the issue, whether you're squeezing out of cloth or not, like if it's cloth, the material that's being squeezed.
Well, it
Like
has
towel
other, it
versus-
has
Like some
other,
people hold it's better to wipe something with a towel, and some people hold it's better to wipe it with a tissue. Because the towel, like, it's different absorption method, I don't know.
the idea is like this. As long as you're not pressing out, whatever it may be, as long as you're not pressing out the liquid from it, then you're okay. You understand? If let's say it's a paper towel, it's a whatever, if it's very wet on the surface and you're just, very gently moving it back and forth, it's great. But if you're pressing on it and you're pushing out the liquid, that's a problem. And it doesn't matter if it's a paper towel, it doesn't matter if it's a towel, you know what I'm saying? It's the same problem. Okay? Yeah.
Because we squeeze the dyes to the curtains, is that squeeze, is that what the squeeze? comes from?
No. The squeezing is the idea of extracting something from its source, from where it was inside it. So by the dyes, they had to take out the seeds from the dye. They had to get rid of, they had to extract it from inside. That's the idea of the squeezing. Okay, good. Maybe we'll stop over here for tonight. School of Mitzvot, guys. We'll pick up next week. I don't think we finished squeezing. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, but we'll take it
Can I ask you a
next week.
question?
Yeah.